History abounds in Las Cruces. Spanish colonization, the American conquest, the Civil War, the arrival of the railroads all had their impact on the city. But there's more to Las Cruces history than you'll find in books. I'm Cheryl Falstead.
And I'm Bud Russo. We'll be your guides as we take a tour of two of Las Cruces' historical neighborhoods, the Mesquite District and the Alameda District. You'll notice houses in the Mesquite District to the east of Main Street are mostly adobe, while those to the west, in the Alameda District, are styled more like homes you'd find back east, in Chicago or Philadelphia.
The homes in the Mesquite District represent the adobe buildings of Las Cruces when the town was originally founded. In 1849, Lieutenant De Los Sackett used a rope and stakes to lay out 84 square blocks, 120 families, many living in jacals or brush shelters, similar to this one, gathered under a cottonwood in what is today's Klein Park and drew lots from a hat to claim part of the new town.
Starting in the park, we'll tell you a bit about the history of some of the homes. At the corner of Griggs and San Pedro is the Navarez house, built in 1913. Jesus Navarez was county clerk and often had couples eloping from Texas at his door, seeking marriage forms.
A block west at Griggs and Campo Streets is the Bombach House, built in the late 1880s by Otto Bombach, a merchant from Prussia. In 1927, the property was purchased by Manuel Chavez and converted into apartments, which were home to career women. Today, the building is used for offices.
At the corner of San Pedro and May is the territorial-style adobe built in the 1890s by Santa Rosa Rico, a freighter who survived a wagon train massacre. Moving south on San Pedro to Bowman Avenue, we come to two houses across from each other. The house to the west is the Jose Comunes house, a hip-roof, stuccoed adobe built around 1920 by Jose Comunes, who was a town trustee in 1914.
Across the street is the Jesus Medina house. Medina was an artist and sign painter who designed and built this house himself in 1907. Notice the large arches and deeply recessed porch, elements of Mexican architecture.
At San Pedro and Amador are the Roybal apartments, built in the late 1880s by Vicente Roybal. This typical New Mexican adobe house, with its stepped buttresses, has changed little since horse-drawn freight wagons stirred up the dust.
At Loman Avenue, another block south, is the Alvarez house, with its beautifully preserved pedimented windows, reflective of the better-built homes of the territorial period. We're going to walk one block east on Loman and head north on Mesquite.
At May and Mesquite is the Barncastle house and store. Tony Barncastle, who built the house in the 1920s, was a descendant of John Barncastle, who came to New Mexico with the California Column during the Civil War. Note the truncated hip roof covered with corrugated metal.
Just a bit east on May is the house built by Primitivo Gonzalez. What sets many of the Mesquite homes apart is the design of their parapet. Here we see the gentle curves of an undulating parapet in the California Mission style. The brick coping is a territorial feature usually reserved for level parapets.
At Court Avenue and Tornillo Street is a building known as the Long Adobe. Built in the late 1800s, it occupied a quarter of one of the original townsite blocks. It was one room deep, with each room having its own door and window, which is probably why it was, at one time, a bordello.
The last house on our tour of the Mesquite District is the Sanchez home. Built in 1849, it was a two-room, plain-faced adobe. In 1928, Carlos and Rosinda Sanchez opened the Sunshine Grocery, adding the Art Deco cantilevered awning to the front.
After the railroad arrived in Las Cruces, the Alameda District developed into the fashionable place to live. In place of Santa Fe-style adobe, many of the homes featured Gothic, Queen Anne, Georgian, Pueblo Revival, and other contemporary styles.
Of the homes in the district, nearly 200 of them are classified as historically significant. A tour of the Alameda District focuses on Pioneer Park, developed in 1896 by the Women's Improvement Association because children had no place to play.
When it opened in 1898, the park was termed the first green spot in Las Cruces, worthy of note. The hipped roof gazebo, with its graceful arched openings, was built in the 1920s.
The street on the south side of the park is Las Cruces Avenue. It was originally called Depot Street. The street was paved from the station into town to impress visitors getting off the train.
There are a number of historical homes on Las Cruces Avenue, just east of the park. This is the Duarte House, now 100 years old. It was built by Sixto Duarte in the California Mission style, solid and square, with high ceilings and a breeze-catching central hallway.
Mark and Edith Thompson received this lot as a wedding present, and in 1909 built this one-story stuccoed adobe. It has open eaves, wide roof overhang, and exposed rafter ends in the popular California craftsman style.
Across the street is the Brannigan House, home of Captain Thomas and Alice Brannigan. Captain Brannigan was an Indian Scout and Mescalero Apache agent.
Built around 1910, the two-story colonial was constructed of artificial stone, concrete block cast as rusticated stone. Alice Brannigan endowed the library for the city of Las Cruces. Built in 1935, the original library is today's Brannigan Cultural Center.
The next house was built by attorney Robert Posey around 1928. It is a high-gabled brick house that shows the Tudor Revival style with its half-timbered gabled ends.
The Judge Frenger House, close to downtown, is a large Spanish Pueblo Revival adobe residence dating from the 19th century. Numa Frenger served as a Rough Rider during the Spanish-American War and was a judge for many years. Some claim Frenger's or his wife's ghost is seen from time to time.
This house on Griggs Avenue, built in 1890, was the home of the younger Sam Bean, who, like his father and uncle, was a successful saloon owner. His uncle Roy was more famous as the law west of the Pecos.
The Elias Day House, also on Griggs, was built in 1896 and is a Queen Anne-style brick house. After his death, his wife Grace hosted tea parties during World War I for wives of servicemen overseas, and the home became known as the Party House.
Built in 1905, the Amador House on Miranda Street is a stuccoed adobe. It has a truncated hip roof with a decorative balustrade, a central entrance door with transom and side lights, and a cement block with an iron ring where visitors could hitch their horses.
This Victorian Queen Anne-style adobe home on Court Street was built by William Reinerson, a member of the California Column. He earned his wealth from mining interests, including the Modoc Mine in the Oregon Mountains.
It has a large round porch, elaborate rake and frieze details, ornate windows, and etched plaster to resemble cut stone. It is the only adobe Queen Anne-style structure remaining in the United States.
These are just a few of the many historic homes of Las Cruces. We hope you've enjoyed learning more about them and their original owners, who have contributed to our city's rich heritage.
This podcast is sponsored by the Las Cruces Convention and Visitors Bureau
and produced by Explore New Mexico.